The observatory incident. Dr. Sarah Chen stood at the viewport of Impossible Station, watching the perpetual storm rage across the gas giant below. Lightning bolts larger than continents illuminated the violet clouds, creating a natural light show that had captivated humanity for centuries. But she wasn't here for the view. She was here because every other species in the galaxy had declared this project impossible. The Captain, humanity's first contact species, had been particularly vocal about it. "Your mathematics is sound," their chief scientist had said, mandibles clicking in what humans had learned was their equivalent of condescending amusement. "But you cannot build a gravitational observatory inside a gas giant's atmosphere. The pressures would crush it. The storms would tear it apart. The magnetic interference would render any readings useless. Only humans would be stupid enough to even consider such a project." That last part had sealed humanity's determination to succeed. The station's warning klaxons blared, drawing Sarah from her reminiscence. Warning. Atmospheric pressure exceeding safety parameters in Section 7. Structural integrity at 82% and declining, the AI announced with artificial calm. Status report. Sarah barked into her comm as she sprinted toward the control center. The station's reinforced corridors curved gently, designed to better distribute the immense pressures trying to crush them. "The new shield configuration is failing," her assistant director, James Rodriguez, reported. "The Hartman frequencies aren't harmonizing with the storm's resonance like we predicted. We've got maybe 20 minutes before total shield collapse." Sarah burst into the control center, where dozens of engineers and scientists worked frantically at their stations. Holographic displays showed the station's shield network struggling against the violet maelstrom outside. They had spent 5 years building this station, developing new materials and technologies just to survive here. They couldn't fail now. "What about the backup configurations?" she demanded. "We've tried all 11, James said. "Nothing's working." The Captain were right. We can't stabilize an artificial structure in these conditions. Sarah stared at the main display, watching the shield frequencies fluctuate. Something tickled at the back of her mind, a pattern she almost recognized. "Show me the storm's harmonic analysis again," she ordered. The display shifted, showing waves of energy coursing through the gas giant's atmosphere. Most species saw chaos here, which was why they'd declared the project impossible. But Sarah saw something else. "The storm isn't fighting our shields," she whispered. "It's trying to sing with them." "What?" James looked at her like she'd lost her mind. "We've been trying to resist the storm," Sarah said, her fingers flying across the controls. "But what if we join it instead? Match its rhythm, become part of the dance." "That's insane," one of the Captain observers protested. "You cannot harmonize with chaos." Sarah ignored him, reconfiguring the shield generators. Instead of trying to create a rigid bubble of protection, she set them to pulse in time with the storm's natural rhythms. "Redirect power from the stabilizers to the harmonic resonators," she ordered. "Let the station flex with the currents instead of fighting them." Warning lights flashed as she input commands that violated every safety protocol. The station groaned around them as metal and energy began moving in ways they were never designed to move. Several crew members rushed to emergency stations, certain they were about to witness a catastrophic failure. But Sarah had seen something in those energy patterns, something beautiful. The storm wasn't chaos. It was music on a cosmic scale. And now their station would join the symphony. For several tense minutes, nothing seemed to change. Then, gradually, the warning klaxons fell silent. The shield readings stabilized, then strengthened. The pressure warnings cleared one by one. "Structural integrity rising," the AI announced. "Shield efficiency at 130% of theoretical maximum." James stared at the readings in disbelief. "How is this possible?" "The storm's feeding us power," Sarah explained, grinning. "We're not fighting it anymore. We're dancing with it. The shield harmonics are amplifying the natural energy flows, creating a self-sustaining resonance field." The captain observer's mandibles worked silently as he studied the data. Finally, he spoke. This should not work. It violates multiple laws of shield dynamics. It is stupid. Maybe, Sarah agreed. But it works. And now we can finally see what we came here to see. She activated the gravity sensors, instruments that could only function in these precise conditions, within the powerful gravitational eddies of a gas giant's atmosphere. The main screen lit up with new data, showing ripples in space-time itself. First clear detection of gravitational waves from the galactic core, she announced proudly. With this observatory, we'll be able to study black hole physics in unprecedented detail, map dark matter distributions across the galaxy, maybe even detect echoes from the Big Bang itself. The captain observer chittered quietly. You humans, you ignore every logical argument about why something cannot be done. You pursue clearly impossible goals. You reject sensible solutions in favor of this. He gestured at the holographic displays showing their success. It is fortunate you are too stupid to know your limitations. Otherwise, you might never achieve such things. Sarah smiled. Thank you. We think our stupidity is one of our best qualities. Outside the viewport, the eternal storm raged on. But now the station moved with it, part of its dance rather than fighting against it. The impossible had become possible, simply because humans had been too stupid to know when to quit. And this was just the beginning. The gravitational observatory would soon reveal wonders that would change their understanding of the universe itself. All because humanity had refused to accept the galaxy's definition of impossible. The captain observer left the control center, presumably to report this development to his superiors. As he departed, Sarah heard him muttering, "Only humans would think to dance with a storm." She turned back to the main display, watching the gravitational waves ripple across space and time. "Only humans," she agreed softly. "And that's exactly why we succeed." The Laughingstock Fleet. Admiral Helena Reyes stood on the bridge of the UES Prometheus, watching her fleet assemble in high orbit above Mars. If you could even call it a fleet. The collection of vessels gathering before her would have made any self-respecting alien admiral die of embarrassment. The Galactic Confederation's military attaché, Commander Vixthar, certainly looked like he was suffering physical pain as he observed from his position beside her. His crystalline form shifted colors rapidly, a sign of extreme distress among his species. "Admiral," he said, his translator struggling to convey the mix of horror and pity in his voice, "you cannot seriously intend to deploy these ships," Helena offered helpfully. "Abominations," Vixthar finished. "The Harvester Swarm is approaching your solar system. They have consumed 12 advanced civilizations. Their bioships can regenerate from any damage. And you intend to face them with..." He gestured at the view screen. "This." Helena couldn't entirely blame him. Her fleet was a hodgepodge of designs that violated every principle of proper spacecraft construction. The flagship Prometheus had been built from a hollowed-out asteroid, its irregular surface studded with engines and weapons in seemingly random patterns. The support vessels were even worse, converted cargo haulers, mining platforms, and even a repurposed space hotel. "The Confederation offered you proper warships," Vixthar continued. "Cutting-edge technology, proven designs. Yet you insisted on this." "We accepted some of your technology," Helena pointed out. "We just adapted it to our needs. You took apart billion-credit systems and rebuilt them wrong." Vixthar's crystalline form flashed crimson. "You attached plasma cannons to mining lasers. You turned shield generators sideways. You installed FTL drives in configurations that should cause them to explode. But they don't explode," Helena said mildly. "They work better." Before Vixthar could respond, the tactical officer called out, "Admiral, long-range sensors detecting harvester vessels entering the system. At least 300 bioships, following expected approach vector." Helena nodded, launched the drones. Hundreds of small objects detached from the fleet's vessels. To Vixthar's visible horror, many of them appeared to be repurposed maintenance bots and mining drones. "Those are not combat units," he protested. "Not originally, no," Helena agreed. "But we made some modifications." The drones spread out in a complex pattern that looked chaotic, but followed a carefully planned deployment. Each drone began broadcasting on different frequencies, some electromagnetic, some gravitational, some using principles that humanity had only recently discovered. "What are they doing?" Vixthar demanded. "Creating noise," Helena said. "The harvesters navigate and communicate using quantum-entangled networks, right? Very efficient. Unblockable. Cannot be jammed." She smiled. "Unless you throw enough random garbage into the quantum field to create interference." "That's..." Vixthar paused. "That's not how quantum entanglement works. According to your physics, no. But we tried it anyway. Turns out reality is more flexible than the textbooks suggest." The first wave of harvester ships appeared on visual sensors, massive organic vessels that looked like deep-sea creatures rendered in nightmare scale. They moved with perfect coordination, their swarm intelligence guiding them as a single entity. Until they hit the drone field. The bioships suddenly lurched, their perfect formation dissolving into chaos. Some spun in circles, others crashed into each other. The swarm's coordination had shattered. "Impossible," Vixthar whispered. "Commence Phase 2, Helena ordered." The converted mining vessels moved forward, their enhanced lasers cutting through the confused harvester ships with surprising effectiveness. The modified cargo haulers launched salvos of missiles, each one containing a payload of industrial chemicals that would have horrified any proper military engineer. "Are those mining explosives?" Vixthar asked weakly. "Among other things," Helena confirmed. "Turns out the acids we use to dissolve asteroids work pretty well on bioship hulls too." The space hotel, now bristling with weapons, demonstrated its own unique contribution. Its massive water recycling systems had been converted into weapons that flash-froze chunks of the organic harvester ships, making them brittle enough for the mining lasers to shatter. "This is not proper space combat," Vixthar protested as the battle continued to unfold. "No," Helena agreed. "It's human space combat. We use what we have, how we think it should be used, not how anyone else thinks it should be used." The harvester ships attempted to adapt, but their highly evolved combat systems were optimized for fighting proper military vessels. They had no protocols for dealing with mining explosives, industrial chemicals, or repurposed civilian technology. Their regeneration couldn't keep up with the strange combinations of damage being inflicted on them. "They're retreating," the tactical officer reported after an hour of chaotic combat. "Harvester fleet is withdrawing from the system. Confirmed kills on 67 bioships, severe damage to at least 100 more." Vixthar's crystalline form had shifted to a pale blue of shock. "You won. With this collection of modified civilian vessels and improvised weapons, you defeated the most dangerous hostile force known to the galaxy." "We did," Helena said, "because we didn't fight the way we were supposed to fight. We fought the way we thought would work." The Confederation's military analysts will need to completely revise their combat doctrines, Vixthar mused. "Everything we thought we knew about space warfare." "Maybe," Helena suggested, "you should revise your thinking about humans first. We may do things differently, but there's usually a method to our madness." She turned back to the view screen, watching the remnants of the harvester fleet flee. Her laughingstock fleet had just accomplished what the galaxy's finest military vessels had failed to do. Not because they were more advanced or more powerful, but because they were too strange, too unconventional, too human to counter. "Stupid humans," Vixthar said, but his tone had changed. There was something like respect in it now. "You don't even know how to build proper warships." "No," Helena agreed. "We just know how to win." The Persistence Protocol. Dr. Marcus Wong stared at the ancient alien terminal, surrounded by the disapproving gazes of the Galactic Archive's most prominent scholars. The crystalline structure pulsed with a faint blue light. the last active remnant of a civilization that had vanished 50 million years ago. Your allotted observation time is complete, human, Archive Master Zilith announced, her bioluminescent tendrils flickering with barely concealed irritation. Like all others before you, you have failed to access the precursor database. We appreciate your enthusiasm, but perhaps it's time to accept the inevitable. Marcus ignored her, continuing to study the strange symbols flowing across the crystal's surface. For 10,000 years, the brightest minds in the galaxy had tried to unlock this terminal's secrets. It was believed to contain the complete scientific and technological knowledge of the precursors, the first spacefaring race in the galaxy. The interface requires a perfect sequence of 372 inputs, another scholar reminded him. The mathematical possibilities are infinite. Yes, Marcus interrupted, not taking his eyes off the display. You've mentioned that several times. Even our most advanced quantum computers would take millions of years to try every combination. The scholar continued. The Voleks spent 3 centuries attempting to decrypt the pattern. The Maraxian collective dedicated their entire computational network to the problem for a millennium. All failed. And yet, Marcus said, pulling out a simple tablet computer, you've never tried this. He placed the tablet on the terminal's interface panel. The assembled scholars watched in horrified fascination as it began displaying a rapid sequence of random inputs. What are you doing? Zilith demanded. That primitive device cannot possibly. I wrote a program, Marcus explained, watching the numbers scroll by. It tries random combinations. When it fails, it tries different ones, over and over. That is, one of the scholars seemed to choke on the words, the stupidest approach possible. There is no methodology, no pattern recognition, no advanced analytics. It's just guessing. Yep, Marcus agreed cheerfully. Been running this program for about 6 months now. Had to replace the tablet twice when the batteries died. 6 months. Another scholar's translation matrix actually glitched trying to convey their incredulity. You've been randomly inputting sequences for 6 months. Oh no, Marcus corrected. This is attempt number 47. I've been at this for about 3 years now. The silence that followed was profound enough that Marcus could hear the hum of the ancient crystal. Finally, Zilith spoke. You have spent 3 years guessing. Well, technically the computer is doing the guessing. I just maintain it and swap out the hardware when needed. He shrugged. I also have similar systems running at 6 other precursor sites. Figure it increases our chances. This is an insult to the very concept of scientific inquiry. One scholar burst out. You cannot simply brute force your way through. The terminal chimed. Every being in the room froze as the crystal's blue glow suddenly intensified. New symbols appeared on its surface, different from the endless loops they'd seen for millennia. Ha, Marcus said. That's new. Impossible, Zilith whispered. The statistical probability. You cannot have. The crystal pulsed again, and a holographic interface materialized above it. Symbols began arranging themselves into recognizable patterns. It's some kind of welcome message, Marcus said, studying the display. I think, yes, it's cycling through different linguistic formats, looking for one we recognize. You solved it, a scholar said numbly. With random guessing, you actually solved it. Well, technically the tablet solved it, Marcus corrected. I just gave it time and replaced the batteries. But, Zilith's tendrils were practically tying themselves in knots. The greatest minds in the galaxy spent thousands of years developing sophisticated decryption algorithms. The most advanced quantum systems devoted centuries of processing power to finding the pattern. And you just guessed until it worked. Sometimes the simple solution is the right one, Marcus said, already taking notes as the system began displaying its contents. Besides, what else was I going to do? Give up. Any rational being would have given up, one scholar exclaimed. The odds against success were astronomical. But not zero. Marcus pointed out. And as long as they weren't zero, why not keep trying? The holographic display had stabilized now, showing what appeared to be a table of contents. The assembled scholars gasped as they realized what they were seeing: the complete technological and scientific knowledge of the most advanced civilization ever known. Initial analysis suggests the data is being converted to formats our systems can read, Marcus reported, his fingers flying across his tablet. Looking at, wow, everything. Physics, biology, engineering. They even included their historical and cultural records. The greatest scientific treasure in galactic history, Xylith said softly, unlocked by the most brute force, inelegant method imaginable. Sometimes, Marcus said, still absorbed in the data streaming across his screen, humanity's greatest strength is our willingness to try the stupid solution. To keep pushing even when everyone else says it's hopeless. To just persist. He looked up at the gathering of stunned scholars and smiled. Besides, the tablets were only running about $50 each. Seemed worth the investment. The terminal continued to pour out its ancient secrets, responding to the simple, repetitive program that had finally broken through where sophisticated algorithms had failed. It was, perhaps, the perfect metaphor for humanity itself, succeeding not through superior intelligence or advanced technology, but through sheer, stubborn unwillingness to accept failure. You know, Marcus added thoughtfully, I have similar systems running at those other sites. Maybe we should check on them too. The scholars' collective groan was drowned out by another terminal chime, this one coming from Marcus's communicator. Oh, he said, checking the message. Looks like the one at the Beta Centauri site just got in too. Anybody want to come with me to check it out? The Galactic Archive would never be quite the same after that day. Neither would humanity's reputation for being stupid. Though now, perhaps, that word was starting to mean something very different to the rest of the galaxy. The illogical solution. The emergency council chamber of the Galactic Confederation hummed with nervous energy as representatives from 37 spacefaring civilizations argued about the approaching doom. The massive hologram floating in the center of the chamber showed their shared problem. A quantum filament storm moving through space, destroying everything in its path. Dr. Maya Patel, Earth's representative, sat quietly while the galaxy's finest minds debated. She watched the storm's visualization, seeing not just destruction, but possibility. The calculations are undeniable, the Mechanoid Collective's ambassador stated, its metallic voice carrying across the chamber. The storm will intersect with 17 populated systems in the next standard month. Complete atomic dissolution of all matter in its path is guaranteed. Our combined fleets cannot affect it, added the Heliorian Supreme Commander, her solar plasma form flickering anxiously. Energy weapons pass through it. Physical projectiles are torn apart at the quantum level. We cannot even approach within a light year without risking ship-wide atomic collapse. Maya raised her hand, waiting patiently while various species proposed and dismissed increasingly desperate solutions. Finally, the council elder acknowledged her. The human representative wishes to speak, the elder announced, multiple eye stalks focusing on her. Though we remind the council that Earth has only achieved interstellar travel within the last century. Maya stood, approaching the hologram. Thank you, elder. I have a question. Why are we trying to stop the storm? The chamber fell silent. Then, predictably, erupted in chaos. Because it's destroying everything in its path. The Heliorian commander burst out. The human questions the obvious, a mechanoid observed. This is not surprising. Maya held up her hands. I mean, why are we trying to stop something we can't stop? Why not use it instead? The silence this time was different. More confused than outrage. Use? A quantum filament storm. The elder's translator struggled to convey their bewilderment. Use what is essentially a tear in the fabric of reality. Exactly, Maya said, manipulating the hologram's controls. Look at its path. In 3 weeks, it will pass near the Herculean Nebula. The nebula contains high concentrations of dark matter, which we can't normally interact with. But this storm, it affects everything at the quantum level. Yes, the mechanoid representative agreed reluctantly. That is why it is so devastating. It disrupts all atomic bonds, converting matter into. It stopped suddenly. Maya smiled. Into energy. Pure energy released by the complete conversion of matter, including dark matter. Understanding began to dawn across various alien faces, appendages, and sensor arrays. You want to. The Heliorian commander's plasma form pulsed rapidly. You want to feed the storm into the nebula. Not exactly, Maya said. I want to use the nebula's gravitational field to split the storm. Look here. She highlighted a point in space. If we detonate a sufficiently large explosion at this coordinates, we can alter the storm's course just enough to graze the nebula's edge. The interaction should cause the filaments to divide, like a stream hitting a rock. That would create 2 quantum filament storms. Someone protested. Yes, Maya agreed, but smaller ones, moving in different directions, neither one on course to hit populated systems. And both storms would be drawing power from the dark matter they convert, leaving regular matter relatively untouched. This is insane, the mechanoid stated. You propose to solve the problem by making it worse. I propose to solve it by thinking differently about it, Maya corrected. We can't stop the storm. We can't contain it. So let's use it. Make it do something useful while it burns itself out. The calculations, the elder began, are already done, Maya said, transmitting data to the central computer. My team's been working on this since we detected the storm. We'll need about 60% of the combined fleet's antimatter reserves for the initial explosion, and we'll have to time it perfectly, but it should work. The chamber erupted in discussion as various species scientific advisors reviewed her calculations. Maya waited patiently, watching their reactions shift from dismissal to disbelief to reluctant consideration. Finally, the elder spoke again. Your calculations appear sound, though your methodology is unconventional. But there is one factor you may not have considered. The dark matter conversion will release unprecedented amounts of energy. This could potentially create a new hazard. Oh, we thought of that too, Maya said cheerfully. That's the best part. All that energy will be released in a very specific frequency range. The same frequency range, as it happens, that our quantum communication networks use. More silence as the implications sank in. You want to power the galaxy's communication networks with a quantum filament storm by feeding it dark matter. The mechanoid's voice contained more emotion than anyone had ever heard from its species. For at least a few centuries, yes, Maya confirmed. The energy output should be quite sustainable once the reaction stabilizes. We'll need to build some new relay stations to handle the load, but that's just engineering. The Heliorian commander's plasma form had stopped flickering, frozen in what might have been shock. You looked at an unstoppable force of cosmic destruction and saw a power source and a dark matter conversion system, Maya added, and a way to upgrade our communication networks. Honestly, this storm might be the best thing that's happened to our region of space in millennia. We just had to look at it the right way. The elder's eye stalks swiveled to focus on each other, their species equivalent of shaking their head. Only humans would see a catastrophe and think, how can we make this useful? Well, Maya said with a smile, someone had to. Now shall we start moving those antimatter reserves into position? We've got about 72 hours to set up the perfect explosion. As the council chamber burst into action, Maya heard the mechanoid representative say quietly to another species, perhaps we should reconsider our definition of intelligence. The human's particular brand of stupidity seems remarkably effective. Maya didn't bother correcting them. Let them call it stupidity if they wanted. She had a quantum filament storm to redirect, dark matter to convert, and a galaxy's worth of communication networks to upgrade. Just another day of humans solving problems by thinking wrong in exactly the right way. Last edited 17 minutes ago. The last laugh. The Grand Hall of the Galactic Confederation had never hosted such an unusual ceremony. Representatives from over 1,000 species filled the vast chamber, their attention focused on the simple wooden podium that had been placed at its center, a peculiarity in itself, as most species preferred holographic interfaces. Ambassador Elizabeth Chen stood at that podium, trying not to smile at the irony of the situation. 10 years ago, humanity had been widely regarded as the galaxy's cosmic joke. Now she was here to deliver the keynote address at the first Galactic Innovation Summit. Distinguished representatives, she began, her words automatically translated for each species present. A decade ago, a member of the High Council called humans the stupidest intelligent species ever encountered. At the time, it was meant as an insult. Today, I'd like to explain why we took it as a compliment. The chamber's atmosphere shifted subtly as various species' attention-indicating organs focused more intently on her. In the past 10 years, humanity has solved problems that plagued the galaxy for millennia. We built an impossible observatory that revolutionized our understanding of gravity. We defeated the Harvester swarm with mining equipment and repurposed civilian vessels. We cracked the precursor database with a $50 tablet computer. We turned a quantum filament storm into the galaxy's most efficient power grid. She paused, letting that sink in. And do you know what all these solutions had in common? They were, by any reasonable standard, stupid. A ripple of translator-modified laughter moved through the chamber. We violated engineering principles that had stood for millions of years. We ignored mathematical proofs that said our solutions couldn't work. We tried things that any sensible species would have dismissed as impossible, and we kept trying them over and over until they worked. Elizabeth gestured to the massive windows showing the starfield beyond. Look out there. The quantum filament network now powers communication and transportation across 12% of the galaxy. The Harvester swarm's remnants have requested diplomatic relations. Apparently, they gained respect for any species crazy enough to weaponize mining equipment. The precursor database has accelerated technological development across every field of science. And that impossible observatory. There are now 27 of them, each making discoveries that rewrite our understanding of the universe. She smiled. All because humans were too stupid to know when to quit. Too stupid to accept conventional wisdom. Too stupid to stop trying things that shouldn't work. The mechanoid representative's voice carried across the chamber. You are suggesting that humanity's greatest asset is its ability to ignore logic. Not ignore it, Elizabeth corrected. Transcend it. Logic is based on what we know. But progress, real progress, comes from pushing beyond what we know into what we don't know. Sometimes that requires doing things that seem illogical until they work. Then they become the new logic. She pulled a small object from her pocket, an ancient tablet computer, battered and scraped. This is the actual device that cracked the precursor database. We've kept it as a reminder, not of our success, but of our process. It represents thousands of failed attempts, millions of wrong guesses, and one human being too stubborn to stop trying. The chamber was silent now, every species focused intently on her words. That's why we're here today. Not to celebrate human achievements, but to celebrate human stupidity. To recognize that progress often requires us to try things that seem wrong. To acknowledge that the galaxy's greatest advances might come from its least logical approaches. Elizabeth smiled broadly, which is why I'm pleased to announce the establishment of the Galactic Stupidity Initiative, a program dedicated to funding and supporting the most illogical, irrational, and seemingly impossible projects across all species, because sometimes the stupidest approach is exactly what we need. The chamber erupted in a cacophony of reactions, some shocked, some amused, some enthusiastic. Elizabeth watched as various species began discussing among themselves, their previous certainties about proper scientific methods visibly crumbling. The High Council elder approached her as she stepped down from the podium. You realize They said, their eye stalks quivering with what might have been amusement, that you have just convinced the galaxy's most advanced civilizations to actively pursue stupidity. Yes, Elizabeth agreed cheerfully. Brilliant, isn't it? Indeed. The elder's translator managed to convey dry humor. One might even say it was a very smart kind of stupid. As Elizabeth looked out over the chamber, she saw the future taking shape. Species that had been bound by million-year-old conventions were starting to think differently. The galaxy's greatest minds were beginning to consider that sometimes the best way forward might be the one that seemed least sensible. Humanity had given the galaxy a new way of thinking by teaching them how to think wrong. And in doing so, they had transformed from the galaxy's joke into its most valuable innovators. It was, Elizabeth reflected, a pretty good punchline. You know, she said to the elder, I think this is just the beginning. Wait until you see what we can accomplish when we're all being stupid together. The elder's eye stalks swiveled in their species equivalent of a laugh. I suspect, Ambassador Chen, that the galaxy will never be quite the same. That's the idea, Elizabeth said, watching as representatives from various species began forming discussion groups, already planning their first stupid projects. After all, if you're going to be stupid, you might as well be stupid on a galactic scale. And somewhere in the vast expanse of space, humanity's impossible observatories kept dancing with gas giant storms. Converted mining ships patrolled the stars. Ancient tablets guessed at ancient secrets, and a quantum filament storm powered the dreams of 1,000 worlds, all because humans had been too stupid to know better. It turned out that was exactly what the galaxy needed.